are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, January 28th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all of that, just want to remind you guys, before we get started here, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we're going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about Chiefs fatigue, because that seems to be something that is a plague, if you will, amongst many NFL fans. So we'll get into that conversation and whether it's justified or not, and I'll give you my opinion. We'll also talk more about the Bills and their most recent loss to these Kansas City Chiefs and where they go from here. How can they get back to this point? What can they do? We'll talk about that. We'll also talk more about the Commanders and their loss to the Eagles, what they got to do this offseason to get themselves back to the same point again. We'll also talk about some of the press conferences yesterday. There was a handful of them. New head coaches being introduced for their new teams. Pete Carroll, Aaron Glenn, Liam Cohen, Brian Schottenheimer. We'll get into all that as well. And then we'll also talk about the Steelers quarterback situation in the final part of the show. Who should they stick with? Should they stick with Russell Wilson, or should they stick with Justin Fields? So we'll get into that as well. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Chiefs fatigue and whether it's justified or not. So this kind of spans back to the last couple of seasons, really. The Chiefs, they have not missed an AFC Championship game since Patrick Mahomes took over as a starter. But now they are going to be in their third consecutive Super Bowl. And you got a lot of people saying, I'm not going to watch it, I'm sick of the Chiefs, and what have you. And I get it, because you want to see something different. And on top of that, many people look at the officiating and say it tilts in the Chiefs' favor. And I understand that as well. You know, sometimes the flags that happen in their games happen in big moments. And we saw that a little bit on Sunday. But there's also the other side of it, and that's kind of the stance I've taken at this point, is what we're witnessing is greatness. It is. And it's something that, you know, we saw the Patriots for years be successful, and many people said probably won't happen again. Well, we're seeing something similar to that happening right before our eyes. And, you know, I guess in a couple weeks, look, we have a chance to see something that we have not seen in the Super Bowl era, and that is a team winning 3 Super Bowls in a row. So I kind of want to see that. Also, being a Giant fan, the Chiefs are going up against the Eagles once again, and I want them to win. I do. Now, the Eagles are a really good team, and they have a great chance to win this game. Just as good of a chance to win this game as the Chiefs do. I agree with what a lot of people are saying. These are the 2 best teams in football. And they both are going to have a great chance to win this game. I think it's going to be a really good game. But that's kind of where I'm at. But a lot of people just cannot stand the Chiefs. And it's just other things as well. I mean, look at the Taylor Swift stuff. You know, even just for a split second, you see her on the screen, and many people react to it. How could the NFL do this? Well, they're doing it so they can bring in more different kinds of demographics that maybe they might not have had originally. And they're going to continue to do that. We're going to see her a handful of times on the Super Bowl. And if the Chiefs win, you're going to see her down on the field with Travis Kelce. But it's amazing, though, how people seem to forget what the Patriots dynasty was like at times. Because people talk about, the Chiefs whining and complaining about calls when certain calls don't go their way. The Patriots did the same thing. Tom Brady did the same thing. Now, I like Patrick Mahomes. I will say one of the few blemishes that he may have is you go back to last year against the Bills, where Kadarius Toney lined up off sides, and the Chiefs scored a touchdown on that play. Kelce catches the pass, he laterals it to Toney, Toney scores the touchdown, they go ahead. It's a big moment in the game. But there was a penalty on the play. There was an offensive offsides, and that was the correct call because Toney did line up in the neutral zone. And Mahomes flipped out, and you could see, players, trying to hold him back. And then, he greets Josh Allen when the game is over, and he's complaining about the call to Josh Allen. It wasn't a good look. So I understand from that perspective, too. Like, hey, I'd rather see somebody else. But, there's other factors into it as well. But, again, for me, I want to see history. Because it really hasn't settled in with what we could possibly see on the Super Bowl. Like, it's something that you might not see again. Tom Brady didn't do it. We talk about the Patriots dynasty. Patriots didn't three-peat. They did make it to 3 straight Super Bowls, but they lost to one against the Eagles. The Chiefs have an opportunity to do that. And the other thing, too, is, people look for different reasons why the Chiefs have been able to do this. And obviously they they blame the refs. You know what it is? These teams don't have that championship pedigree like the Chiefs do. They don't know how to step up in big moments like the Chiefs do. It's true. All these quarterbacks that we see, they are super talented. Might be more talented than, the last era of quarterbacks. But here's the thing. Other than Patrick Mahomes, none of these guys have rings. And I've said this over and over again. The quarterbacks to win in the Mahomes era are quarterbacks from that 2010s era. So who's going to be the next guy to do it? Eventually, the Chiefs are going to get knocked off. The Chiefs will lose at some point. They will. But, when is that going to happen? Patrick Mahomes has not lost a playoff game. The Chiefs have not lost a playoff game since they lost to Joe Burrow in the AFC Championship game. And had it not been for Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes would have played in six straight Super Bowls. And if it wasn't for Tom Brady, he would have played in 7. He would have been in the Super Bowl every single year that he's been a starter. But it took everything that the Bengals and the Patriots had to knock him off in those games. Now, obviously, the Super Bowl against the Bucs was different, but still, that was a Super Bowl appearance. We're just talking about AFC Championship games. So, yeah, I get it. You'd want to see something different, but you know what? Josh Allen put it perfectly. You want to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. And teams have not been able to do that these last few years. Now, the Eagles have an opportunity to do that, so we'll see if that's the team that can knock them off. And like I said, I think they have a great chance to do it. But only time will tell. Only time will tell. But enough of the whining. Because that's the thing. Everybody's whining. And you're saying you're not going to watch the game. You say that, you're going to be tuning in. You're going to be tuning in. Because the other thing, too, is, and I agree with this, don't you want to see the Chiefs lose? Like, if you're tired of the Chiefs, don't you want to see someone knock them off? That adds to the excitement of the Super Bowl. Is if you really don't want to see the Chiefs succeed, you have the opportunity for 3 hours to root as hard as you can for them to lose. For them to lose the game. You have that. And, for me, the Chiefs being in the Super Bowl, it adds a lot to it. Now, me saying that, you could say, well, you're saying that because, I guess you're like the refs. You want to see the Chiefs get all the calls and get to the Super Bowl. And the NFL can make as much money as possible with the Chiefs. No, I'm just saying, like, the Chiefs being in it, it's a game I want to watch. And that's not to say, if the Bills got there or the Ravens got there, the game, wouldn't be as good. But the Chiefs being in the Super Bowl, it adds a lot to it, like I said. So, again, we'll see what happens in a couple weeks. I think the Super Bowl is going to be really good, regardless if you want to watch it or not. It's going to be a good game. I know it's something that we already saw. Believe me, I'm the same way. I would have liked to maybe have seen something different. But these other teams, they were not able to knock off the Chiefs and the Eagles. They weren't. You had a chance to. But you just weren't as good. Patrick Mahomes pretty much has had home field advantage throughout the playoffs for his entire career. Last year was the only exception. Back in 2019, he had the 2 seed. But the Ravens got eliminated, so every game was at home. Well, the AFC Championship game in the divisional round. Last year was the only time he had to go on the road. And we talk about how, the Chiefs aren't that good, and look, I said that they got lucky at times this year. But they're also a really good team. And going into the playoffs, I said they're going to turn it up when they have to. And they have. Especially in this past game on Sunday. Patrick Mahomes played really well. The defense got key stops when they needed to. They've been there and done that before. These other teams, they just cannot make the plays in the big moments. The Chiefs can. And until a team can do that, you are going to see the Chiefs in this spot for years to come. Now, what goes up must come down at some point. Mahomes is not always going to have Travis Kelce. Not always going to have Andy Reid. At some point, those guys are going to be leaving. So then things are going to change. And maybe, the Chiefs have a couple of years where, they'll make the playoffs, but they don't go on a deep playoff run. And other teams get a chance to shine. But for right now, it's the Chiefs. And we'll see what happens when they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. But let me know what you guys think about the Chiefs fatigue. Is it justified? Is it not justified? To me, I get it. But some people, their reasoning might be a little foolish. So we're going to take our first break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Bills. So we're going to have to talking about the Bills. And just, again, another disappointment, another early round playoff exit. So we'll get into that. And will they ever get over the hump? So we'll talk about that when we return from our first break. So with that being said, stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk more about the Buffalo Bills and them once again being eliminated in the playoffs by the Kansas City Chiefs. So, of course, we talked about the game yesterday, but it's more of the same with the Bills. And, I had to see it to believe it when watching this game the other night. There was really never a point where, now I thought the Bills could definitely win the game, but there was never a point where I thought, yeah, the Bills got this locked down. There wasn't. They go down 21-10. Josh Allen hits Matt Collins for the touchdown before the end of the half, and that was big, to get yourself, to close the gap between the two teams at that point. And then they went ahead at one point. They were up by 1. But even then, it's just, this game was not going to be over until the clock hit 0. That's when I would be like, all right, the Bills got this. But, yeah, it's just, I talked about it in the last segment. It's just the Chiefs, they made more plays in big moments than the Bills did. And I thought it was interesting. So I saw the clip of RG3 on the Kay Adams show, and he was breaking down that 4th and 5 play. And he said, if Josh was able to, change the protection at the line and, have it so where, they would have picked up that corner blitz, then he could have hit Khalil Shakir, who was running a kind of a comeback route. I don't know what the kind of route it was, but he could have threw it to Khalil Shakir. He could have threw it to Dalton Kincaid over the middle. But, Steve Spagnuolo really designed that blitz well, or disguised that blitz well, because, the Bills did not expect Trent McDuffie, right, to, blitz on that play. But the Chiefs brought the house, and, Josh Allen, heaved it up, and Kincaid could have caught it. And, look, he should have caught it, but that's not an easy catch. People were saying it's like the Mark Andrews catch. It's not. It's not like the Mark Andrews catch. Mark Andrews, that ball hit him right in the chest. He should have caught that. That was an easier catch than what we saw on Sunday. Because, Dalton Kincaid had to come back for it, and he dove for it. And, yeah, he should have caught it. But that was a tougher catch. And that would have been a heck of a play by Josh Allen if that would have been completed. But, yeah, it's just more of the same. Now, what do the Bills have to do to get back to this point? Look, they still have a very good team. Now, this was a year where many people thought the Bills were not going to play well. We're not going to do well this year. And, I started drinking that Kool-Aid, but then I came back and said, you know what, this team is still going to make the playoffs. I can't see a world where Josh Allen's not going to make it. So, yeah, I had them as a wild card team. And we all know who I had winning the AFC East. But Josh Allen had arguably his best year. And, the Bills, they got back to the championship game. Now, I think there's some things they got to clean up on defense. There's some older players on that side of the ball. I'm thinking of Von Miller. They need to get more youth on that side of the ball. And get more impact players as well. I mean, I don't know what their cap situation is off the top of my head, but I think defense should definitely be up there in terms of their priorities this offseason. Receivers, look, there are guys that stepped up this year. Khalil Shakir had a good year. Matt Collins led the team in touchdown receptions. You still got the 2 tight ends. James Cook is one of the more underrated backs in the league. But you definitely are missing something. Amari Cooper, obviously you do that trade, in the middle of the year, but he was not as impactful as I think we would have thought he would have been. They need to get somebody else on that side. You look at the Chiefs, they got a lot of older players. And, when you're talking about Kelsey and D-Hop and Juju Smith-Schuster, you got Xavier Worthy, who has really, stepped it up, towards the end of the season and then into the playoffs. Because since Hollywood Brown has come back, he's looked a lot better. That's helped that offense. But, yeah, the Chiefs have guys that fit their system too. I mean, they brought back Juju Smith-Schuster and they brought back Kareem Hunt, and look at what those guys have done. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster had 2 big catches for him. Kareem Hunt had a good game as well. And Jim Nantz said it too. I said the same thing. He was looking like the Kareem Hunt from his rookie season and in 2018 as well. First 2 years in the league. You know, the Bills need another impactful player on that offense. Now, that player was Stephon Diggs, but obviously things changed, and you know he wanted to go elsewhere. And you know what? Both teams, or both sides. I mean, unfortunately for Diggs, he got hurt, but he was off to a very good start with the Texans, and the Bills were doing well. So you know, I mean, it worked out for both sides. But yeah, and I know there's people are throwing out there that maybe the Dolphins could trade Tyreek Hill to the Bills. I don't see that happening. I don't think they're going to trade him within the division. But, you know, I mean, there's some receivers that are going to be out there. Maybe they trade for one or they could sign one. Again, I got to see what the cap situation is like. But, look, this team made it to the AFC Championship game in a year where maybe people didn't expect them to do that. So next year, you reload and you go at it again and hope that it goes your way this time. I mean, it's just tough, though. I mean, you got to feel for Bills fans. You lose 4 straight Super Bowls, and now, here in the present day, you lose 4 straight playoff games to the same quarterback. Well, actually, I shouldn't say 4 straight because you did lose to Joe Burrow in between that. But still, you've lost 4 straight games to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. That's a better way to put it. So, it's just, you know, when is it going to end? Will they ever get over the hump? Like I said in the last segment, at some point, what goes up must come down. At some point, the Chiefs are going to slip up. Maybe it's next week. Maybe it is. But at some point, they're going to slip up. At some point, they are going to regress. And that is going to allow possibly the Josh Allens of the world, the Joe Burrows of the world, the Lamar Jacksons of the world, to finally get their opportunity to get that Super Bowl. Because those guys deserve it. And there's some other quarterbacks as well that I did not mention. But those are the 3, you know, because Burrow's played in one. Josh Allen and Lamar, they have played in AFC Championship games. You know, at some point, it's going to break their way. I do believe that. Now, it's possible that, you know, maybe it doesn't. And Mahomes just runs the AFC for his entire career. No, it's not going to happen. At some point, the Chiefs will lose in the playoffs. But who knows when that's going to happen? You know, we thought, all right, the Bills were at home last year. This could be it. Nope. And then the following week, all right, the Ravens, you know, they're the number 1 seed. They're at home. This could be their chance to beat the Chiefs. Nope. Lamar Jackson has only beaten Patrick Mahomes 1 time. And he's lucky that he won that 1 time. And then this year, you thought, you know, let's see. Both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are up there for MVP. Maybe this is it. Nope. And again, the Chiefs struggled offensively at times throughout the regular season, just like last year. But like I said, they're going to turn it up in the playoffs. You just know they are. And until they don't, you know, I'm going to keep saying that. And they turned it up again. So it's just upsetting. And my friend brought this up too. I mean, you watch Josh Allen's press conferences every year that they've lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs. And this one, he was the most depressed that he's been. Because it's like, again, this has happened. When is it going to end? And it's not like he doesn't play well in these games. He was great on Sunday. You know, I mean, he made some incredible throws. Now, I didn't bring this up during the recap, but there were some passes early on where I was like, what are you doing? You know, I think, I don't know, what was it, the first or the second drive of the game for the Bills, where he just like heaved it up, you know, down the field, and that could have been intercepted. There was a couple of times where he could have got intercepted. There were some tip passes at the line of scrimmage, you know, and the Bills did fumble it a handful of times, but thankfully they were able to jump back on it. You know, they won the turnover battle. They still lost. But, yeah, I mean, the ball did get put in harm's way. But the Bills were fortunate that nothing led to a turnover. But Josh Allen, he's only had, I think, one interception in the games against the Chiefs in the playoffs? Yeah, Josh Allen has had one interception in his 4 games against the Chiefs in the playoffs. That's what one of my friends said. And there were some other stats. I think I still have them saved. First there were 5 fumbles in the AFC Championship game. The Chiefs recovered all of them. Teams with 4+ touchdowns and 0 turnovers are 21-2 in the playoffs since 2020. The 2 losses: Bills at Chiefs 2024 AFC Championship game, Bills at Chiefs 2021 divisional round. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like, when you watch the playoff games that Lamar Jackson has lost, you could say, yeah, he didn't play well. But for Josh Allen, a majority of his playoff games, he plays good. It's just they come up short. I mean, they aired the divisional round game, on Saturday when they lost 42-36. Josh Allen, that was probably one of the best games he has ever played in the NFL. Not just in the regular season. Overall. And it comes down to the Chiefs get the ball with 13 seconds left, and they're able to get in field goal range, mainly because they had all 3 timeouts left. They tie the game, they get the ball to start overtime, and they win it. And that's why the overtime rules have changed. That's why last year was the first time we ever saw these new overtime rules take effect, because there really hasn't been any overtime games in the playoffs since the rule change. Because we almost had our first double overtime game. But, yeah, it's tough. And the other thing, too, is should Sean McDermott be fired? No. Absolutely not. Now, the disparity between him and Andy Reid, there's a big gap. Andy Reid is a much better coach than Sean McDermott. But Sean McDermott and the Bills, they consistently make the playoffs every single year. They've made it to 2 AFC Championship games. They just come up short. It's not like this team is not making the playoffs and they're, I mean, last year could have been the year. Because they it didn't look good there for a little bit, but they still made the playoffs. And, they had a home playoff game against the Chiefs. They ended up losing it. It was a close one. But yeah, I don't think Sean McDermott should be fired. I think if the Bills have a bad year next year, then yeah, maybe you consider it. But I would not be looking to move off of Sean McDermott. They have the team to do it. I mean, it's the same thing with the Ravens. Now, I think the Ravens roster, you'd probably favor it over the Bills right now. Because, if you take Josh Allen off the Bills, I mean, they might not even sniff the playoff. Well, yeah, they don't even sniff the playoffs. With the Ravens, I mean, we saw what happened when Lamar Jackson got hurt. The Ravens weren't the same team. But, you still got Derrick Henry that you can lean on. I mean, the Bills can lean on James Cook, but, the Ravens, they kind of figured things out on defense, so their defense would keep them in games. The Ravens have the better defense of the two. The Ravens roster as a whole, you'd probably take over the Bills. But because the Bills have Josh Allen, it doesn't matter. How many times have we seen quarterbacks carry a team where the roster is not very good? So. But let me know what you guys think about the Bills' playoff woes. Do you think they eventually get over the hump? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys, once again, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Washington Commanders. Kind of more on their playoff loss to the Eagles on Sunday and just, what they have to do. Kind of similar to the Bills, what they got to do to get back and make a deep playoff run once again. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we're now getting to talking about the Commanders, just more on their playoff loss, and kind of similar to what we talked about with the Bills. Not exactly similar, but what they have to do to get back to this point again. I did want to bring up, though, the Lions have hired a new offensive coordinator, John Morton. He will be their next offensive coordinator, replacing Ben Johnson. He's 55, so you go from a younger guy to now an older guy. As my dog starts barking. He spent the last 2 seasons as the Broncos' passing game coordinator, getting a better season out of Russell Wilson in 2023, and also, was with them this past year with Bo Nix, and Bo Nix played well this year. With the limited weapons, obviously the Broncos, another team, similar to what we're going to say with the Commanders, a team that's going to have to surround their young quarterback with more talent. He was also the Jets' OC in 2017. Morton was on Dan Campbell's staff as a senior offensive assistant in 2022 and has a background as a wide receivers coach. Morton has a huge amount of talent to work with all over the offense in Detroit. So let's see what he does. This is courtesy of All Sports News on Instagram. So, yeah, Lions have their new offensive coordinator. And obviously we will talk more about another coordinator from the Lions that spoke to the media yesterday, and that is Aaron Glenn. So we'll get into that in the next segment. But let's talk about the Commanders. So, look, how many times am I going to say it? I did a podcast with my friend the other day when we were previewing the championship games. And he had the Commanders, I think, at like 7 or 8 wins. And when I said, I had them going, 4-13 or 5-12, he said that was a bit harsh, and probably was. And early on, after, I made my prediction, my schedule breakdown, there was a part of me that was regretting giving them such a low bar this year, because I said this one could be one that hurts me. And boy, did it ever. Because they not only got more than 4 to 5 wins, they made the playoffs. They won 12 games. They won 2 playoff games, and they made it to the NFC Championship game. They really exceeded expectations. And I don't think Jaden Daniels is the reason they lost on Sunday. His teammates couldn't hold on to the ball. He did throw a pick late, but you're trying to get something. You're just heaving it up and hoping that, your receiver can make a play on it. And, they had a chance to, come back in the game. They were driving. They were down 34 to 23 at one point. And then I think that's when Eckler fumbled. If they score there and then you get a 2-point conversion, all of a sudden it's a 3-point game. But then once Eckler fumbles, then the Eagles just really took over the game. I don't think the Commanders, even if they would have cut the lead to, at least 3, they got a touchdown on that drive, I still don't think they're winning the game. Because the Commanders, they could not stop the Eagles' running game. And that is one of the biggest needs that they're going to need to address this offseason. Got to improve this defensive line. They got to improve this defense as a whole. Because this defense did get picked apart. Now, played a lot better than it did last year because look at how the team finished. You know, and they went and they traded for Marshawn Lattimore, which was a good trade. Because they needed, you know, a top corner, and they got that. But now it's all about improving this team even more. And they got the quarterback to do it. You know, you need more weapons around him. You know, and they surrounded him with more veteran talent. Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler. Yeah, I mean, again, those guys ended up being good for them. And Bobby Wagner on the defensive side of the ball, he was, you know, ranked as one of the top linebackers this year. You know, he could still play. You know, but you need more. You need more to that team. You know, you got Terry McLaurin as your number one receiver, but you need somebody else. You know, they got Luke McCaffrey, a young guy, but I don't know. They need more weapons on that team. You got two good running backs, but you know, I mean, I don't know what Ertz's plans are. I forget what they signed. Did they sign him to a 2-year deal? I mean, either way, I mean, if he wants to keep playing, I think the Commanders should bring him back because he did play well for them. But you need somebody opposite of Terry McLaurin. And, you know, another year for Jaden Daniels, too. Like, Jaden Daniels is only going to get better. And that is one thing that I touched upon during my schedule breakdown is the quarterback play. How is the quarterback play going to be? Because, you know, I mean, I don't really know too much about the rookies coming in. I don't know how they're going to do. And, you know, these rookie quarterbacks, for the most part, they all played well. You know, 2 of them made the playoffs, Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, who we just talked about, or briefly mentioned. You know, this is going to be a really good class. This is a really good class. And Jaden Daniels is a big part of that. So, you know, I didn't know what to expect going into the year. But, you know, you had the coaching staff, you give them a lot of credit. And also, what's interesting is there's, you know, a story that came out about Dan Snyder and, you know, how he's just so ticked off at how well the Commanders played this year because, you know, he was basically forced to sell the team. You know, it's amazing how he did that and, you know, the Commanders made it to the NFC Championship game. I don't know why I keep saying AFC. But who knows? I mean, if he was still the owner, like, what would have happened? Maybe they don't get some of the players that they brought in this year. So, I mean, listen, they're going to be back next year. They're going to be a threat in this NFC. I mean, this NFC East, I mean, we could be looking at a pretty good division with the Eagles, the Commanders, and I think Dallas, you know, I think Dallas should bounce back. You know, they get Dak back healthy, you know, you get a decent running game. You know, you pair somebody up with Rico Dowdle. Because Dowdle had some good games this year, but I think you need somebody else there. You know, it's not a bad division like it used to be. It's not the NFC East anymore. And notice how I didn't mention the Giants. The Giants are going to be, unfortunately for Giant fans, they're going to be a punching bag for this division. For the entire division now. Because now, you know, they were punching bags for the Eagles and the Cowboys. Now, you throw the Commanders into it. And the Giants don't have a quarterback. You know, the Eagles got Jalen Hurts. Commanders got Jaden Daniels. And the Cowboys got Dak. Giants have Tommy DeVito. So, yeah. Not looking good for the G-men. But, you know, the Commanders for a long time. I mean, everybody... I mean, it's weird how some of the divisional games would go. Because, like, the Giants would beat them. And then the Commanders would play really well against the Eagles. You know, they have the last couple of years. I mean, obviously not on Sunday, but, you know, they've played some close games against them. Even last year when they weren't that good. You know, the Cowboys, they've won games against them in recent years, but, you know, the Cowboys at times have owned them. I mean, look at Thanksgiving last year. Cowboys won what was it, 45-10? Something like that. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, no, they're here. They're going to be a threat. So, right now, you'd still favor the Eagles. I'd probably still favor the Eagles going into next year. But let's see what the Commanders do. Let's see what they end up doing this offseason to improve this team. They got a lot of work to do. So, but the biggest thing is they got the quarterback. And in a year, see, you compare it to, the 2022 Giants. I mean, I mean, the Commanders are a much better team than that team. And on top of that, they made it to a championship game. They beat a number 1 seed on the road. The Giants beat the Vikings, who had one of the worst defenses in the league. They had a soft schedule at times. The Commanders, they beat some good teams this year. I mean, I know when they beat Philly, Jalen Hurts was beat up, but still. They beat Philly. Jane Daniels played well against that defense. So, the Giants, when they made the playoffs, they didn't beat Dallas or Philly. So, yeah, I mean, hats off to the Commanders, though. They got nothing to be ashamed of. It's just, yeah, you would have liked to have seen the game on Sunday be a little bit more competitive. Definitely. But the Eagles they're just a better team. The better team won on Sunday. And like I said, it was going to be a tall task for the Commanders to go in there and knock the Eagles off. So, we'll see how they bounce back next year, but they're going to be a good team again. If they make the right moves this offseason, they're going to be right. They're going to be in the thick of it in 2025. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Commanders. What potential moves do you think they can make this offseason? Again, you want to add more to the defense, add some more weapons to the offense, get somebody else in there opposite of Terry McLaurin, and then you go from there. So, but they going on this deep playoff run now, they have the experience. They have that playoff experience now. So now it's all about taking that next step next year. And, there's going to be better teams next year. There's going to be teams that had off years that are going to have better years next year. And then there's going to be teams that had good years this year that are going to have off years next year. That's the thing with the NFL. Sometimes for certain teams, it's a year-to-year thing. One year you're good. Next year maybe you're not so good. Sustainability. That's the key. And that's why the Chiefs have been successful. Because they've been able to sustain it. Sorry, I had to bring that up. I guess you're getting... Now you guys got Chiefs fatigue with the show. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, what the Commanders could potentially do this offseason. So, we are going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about the press conferences from yesterday. A handful of coaches met with the media, so I'll talk about some of them and what they had to say. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the press conferences from yesterday. We had a handful of head coaches meet with the media. Pete Carroll, Brian Schottenheimer, Liam Cohen, Aaron Glenn. I did watch. Some of them were longer than others. I did mainly focus on Aaron Glenn and what he had to say. Actually, the biggest takeaway one of the biggest takeaways from Aaron Glenn's press conference is they did bring up Aaron Rodgers. He did say in the press conference that, they've been in communication with Rodgers and he will be talked about. But the big thing for them is they're going to take a long look at this roster. And they're going to determine whether or not Aaron Rodgers fits this. And the other thing, too, is you got to see if Aaron Rodgers is willing to, play under this new regime and, if he wants to play in general. So, we'll see how it goes. But, there were those reports out there that Aaron Glenn wants to keep Aaron Rodgers. So, we'll see what ultimately ends up happening. But I thought it was interesting that he did bring that up. Because I don't believe anybody... Now, the media did ask him follow-up questions after he brought up Rodgers, but I don't believe... I don't think anybody asked him a question on Rodgers, and that's why he brought it up. He brought it up on his own. Because he knows that is one of the biggest things that people want to know, is do they want to bring back Aaron Rodgers? And we'll see. Time will tell. But I thought that was interesting. But yeah, listen. I'm a guy that, I've fallen for it for certain press conferences. Like Joe Judge's press conference, he knocked it out of the park. And I thought, all right, this is what we want to hear. Because, when you saw McAdoo's press conference, as a Giant fan, you saw McAdoo's press conference and Shermer's press conference, you were like, eh. But with Joe Judge, you were like, all right, I like what this guy has to say. Let's see what he can do. And we thought initially that he could be the guy, but quickly we found out he was not. So, look, Aaron Glenn spoke very well. At his press conference yesterday. Said all the right things, and, he just talked about, the journey that he was on and how he wanted this job. This is all he wanted. This is the dream job, and, to come back to the Jets and to help, put this team back in a better spot, that means something to him. You could tell that. And you could tell that he's going to be a motivator. And, he comes from a team, most recently with the Lions. They have built up a great culture over there. And you would hope, if you're a Jet fan, that he could bring that culture over to the Jets. And, like I said, steer this team in the right direction. But, again, press conference is one thing. Now you got to go out there and show it on the field. The only way this is going to work is if your team gets you the results that you desire on the field. And we'll see. He's got a defensive background, which is similar to, past coaches, the one that the Jets just had in Robert Saleh. So, we'll see. But Aaron Glenn also really worked his way up. So, it's going to be different. And, like I said, we'll see if they end up bringing back Rodgers. So, you had that. Also got to watch a little bit of Pete Carroll's press conference. Look, Pete Carroll was the right guy. And he talked about how Tom Brady really had, an influence. That was something the media asked him about, how much influence Tom Brady had on bringing in Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll said that, maybe Brady wasn't always around, obviously, because, he's preoccupied with, calling the playoff games here. But he has an impact. And, he also talked about how, himself and the GM, they're going to also lean on Brady because, Tom Brady did a lot of winning, and Tom Brady knows football. Now, obviously, this is a different kind of area with him being, a part-time owner. But, I mean, it's Tom Brady. So I think you definitely will take into consideration, maybe some things that he has to say. Or a lot of the things he has to say. But also it's funny how Marshawn Lynch, he was present at the press conference. And, he yelled out Raiders. He did the Raiders, kind of like what Chris Bertman does. He yelled that out while Pete Carroll was talking. But Pete Carroll loves to coach. And he said he had a great year away from football. He talked about he would go to, some of his grandson's games, his son's games, because they're all in football. They're all involved. They're coaching and things like that. So it's not like Pete Carroll just sat back and put his feet up and said, yeah, I'm not going to do anything while I'm away. Pete Carroll wants to keep coaching. And, he talked about how, it took some time for, he said past programs that he worked with. It took some time for them to build things up. He said, they want immediate results here. So the thing is, I mean, I just love how stacked the AFC West is with coaches. I mean, because you have Harbaugh, Pete Carroll now, Sean Payton, Andy Reid. You got all these guys there now in this division. It's awesome. It's just I want to see now the Raiders build up their team, because you had 3 of the 4 make the playoffs. Now the Raiders, they want to be a part of that. And, like I said yesterday, or during this week, yesterday, you got some players to build around, but you need to figure out the quarterback. And could they go out and get a veteran? What's their plan of attack here? We'll have to find out. But look, I love the hire for the Raiders. Pete Carroll is really going to inject some energy into this team, something that they've needed. I was hoping that Antonio Pierce was going to be that guy. It didn't turn out that way. Hopefully Pete Carroll is the guy. And I would love to know, anyone watching this as a Raiders fan, how do you feel about this hire? Because, if I'm a Raiders fan, I'd be ecstatic over this. Pete Carroll will get the best out of his teams. So we'll see. Also, there were some, cringe moments, I'll call it, with some of the press conference. Well, really one of them. And that was, I know a lot of people are talking about Liam Cohen and his Duval chant. How that was kind of cringe. But it is what it is. Look, we've seen many different kinds of press conferences over the years where, some of them could be too extreme. Some of them not so much. I'll always bring up the contrast between Dan Campbell's press conference and Nick Sirianni's press conference. Like, Dan Campbell's is really extreme. Nick Sirianni, you were like scratching your head saying, what is he talking about? But guess what? Nick Sirianni is coaching in his second Super Bowl, and Dan Campbell is coming off of a year where the Lions had the best regular season in their franchise. So they're doing something right. And Liam Cohen got a lot out of Baker Mayfield in 2024. So we'll see what he does with Trevor Lawrence. This could end up being a good hire, or it could end up being a disaster. We'll have to see. And then also, I know some Cowboys fans like what they heard out of Brian Schottenheimer, because, he talked about how, because with the Cowboys, they lack motion during their plays. So he did bring that up. So that was something that, Cowboys fans want to hear now. They got to see that be executed in games. But, and Jerry Jones actually got emotional during the press conference too. I guess he's trying to, fans probably don't want to hear it. But, look, Jerry wanted to hire one of his guys. I mean, we know this. And, it was either going to be him, it was going to be Kellen Moore, maybe Jason Witten. It wasn't going to be a splash hire. But we'll see what happens now with the healthy Dak Prescott. The Cowboys, they went 7-10. With Dak Prescott, you hope they win more games. Healthy. But like I said, only time will tell. But yeah, so that's kind of like my overall impression on the press conferences. Let me know what you guys think, though. What were some of your takeaways from them? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our final break of the show now. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the Steelers quarterback situation. Should they stick with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson? We'll talk about that. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Steelers quarterback situation. Because there was an article that came out. Art Rooney II had some comments on the Steelers quarterback situation. So I just wanted to get into that and give you my thoughts. So Art Rooney II said securing a quarterback is the team's priority, and it's his preference to sign either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson this offseason. And Rooney said it's unlikely that they're going to keep both. So which one would you prefer? Now, he also said, I wouldn't close the door, but I'd say it's probably unlikely. I think both of them see themselves as starters, and I don't know what they want to share. I don't know that they want to share the same job again next year. So I would say most likely we probably don't wind up bringing them both back. They're both capable quarterbacks, and my preference would be to sign one of them. So that'll be the priority, and I think that will give us the best opportunity to move forward. We've got a whole quarterback room to fill, so there's jobs open in there. I wouldn't be surprised if we look in the draft as well, either this year or next, and so that's got to be the priority. It sort of takes two to tango, so we'll see where it goes. I think my preference would probably be to have something more than a 1 year in place next time around, but we'll see what it takes. I think both Russ and Justin showed promise in certain stretches during the season, and I think they're both capable of being starters in this league. So we have decisions, and they have decisions too. My goal is to be, and this is what Russell Wilson said, my goal is to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers for a long time, hopefully finish my career there, God willing. I think you have to take that into consideration. That's a factor when talking about like the age disparity between the two QBs. Because Russell Wilson's 36 now, and Justin Fields is 20. Someone requested a trade in one of my leagues. Justin Fields is 25. And someone proposed a trade to me in fantasy. Let's see what it is. Speaking of Justin Fields, my friend offered me a second and a fourth-round pick for Justin Fields and Jaylen Warren. And this is for 2026. No thanks. That's funny. It's funny how we're talking about Justin Fields and my friend, he's also a Steelers fan, so he's trying to get those Steelers on his team. But I'm good, because the problem is I end up doing that, and the only quarterback I have on my team is Jordan Love, so we're not doing that. But back to this, though. What should the Steelers do? So it seems like they're kind of set on bringing back either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And in the grand scheme of things, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, they're not going to be guys that put the Steelers over the top. Now, who knows how the season would have played out if Justin Fields stayed the quarterback throughout and probably plays out similar to what transpired with Russ when Russ took over. But again, I don't think these guys are going to take them over the top. Maybe the Steelers go and they draft a quarterback, whether it's in this upcoming draft or it's next year. I think for 1 year, or maybe you sign one of these guys on a 2-year deal. I think maybe that's something they'd probably explore, bringing one of them back. I think you could get more out of... Now, I think Russell Wilson's the better passer of the two, but at the same time, Russell Wilson is not what he used to be. Like with Justin Fields, you could still see what you could get out of him. And, I thought, in the limited time that we saw him, he showed us some things with the Steelers. And, I think for the Steelers, one of the things I talked about with them is they lack explosiveness on this offense. And I think you need to add more, not just when it comes to the quarterback, but you need more around the quarterback. Like with Justin Fields, we saw what he did in Chicago, when he would run the football. Russell Wilson, you're not going to get that. In this new NFL, you got to have a quarterback that moves around a little bit. Now, Russ used to be able to do that. Obviously, he's getting older. Now, I do think, what Rooney said, I agree, that both of these guys, can still be starters in this league. But to me, I look at them now as more of bridge guys as opposed to franchise quarterbacks. But I think if you're talking about both of them, who would you rather have? I'd probably take Justin Fields. Just because at this point, I could probably get more out of him than Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson, he did some nice things for the Steelers, and he played well. But everything kind of ended the same when it comes to the Steelers. They ended the year losing 5 straight. And, Steelers fans are just beside themselves because it's like, here we go, another year where you have a good regular season and then you're an early round exit. And Mike Tomlin, look, he made a bold decision by taking Fields out. I was a little bit surprised that they pulled the plug on Fields. I thought, look, Fields put them in a good position. I thought they were going to keep rolling with him. But Mike Tomlin said Russ is the starter. Russ has always been considered the starter all along. Finally got over the calf injury. And then he was inserted in. And, again, he played well at certain times. And he still can make some good throws. He made some good throws this year. But, again, he's not the same player. He's not. And that's why I think, if you take a guy like Justin Fields over Russ, I feel like that would be the better decision. But my prediction is I think they'll keep Russ and then they'll move off of Justin Fields and Justin Fields will go elsewhere. Who knows? Maybe Justin Fields, signs with the Giants or something. I don't know. That's my prediction. I think they'll bring back Russ, and then maybe you draft a quarterback and you have them sit behind Russ, and you hope that maybe they turn out to be the guy. I don't know. So maybe you bring back Russ on like a 2-year deal or something. Maybe. That's kind of how I see it. But, you know, you need a quarterback that can compete in this conference. Now, fortunately for the Steelers, the Browns have more issues with their quarterback situation than they do. So at least you kind of have like a leg up on them. But I know they beat Lamar Jackson this year and they beat Joe Burrow this year, but next year is going to be different. You know, I think the Bengals are going to be a much better team defensively. So you're not going to be able to walk into Cincinnati and, you know, drop 44 points on them. You're not. So, you know, the Bengals are going to be a better team. The Ravens, I mean, for some reason they always, I mean, they struggle against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. I know there's that narrative out there, and there's some truth to it about Lamar Jackson and you know, him struggling against the Steelers, but it's really when it's in Pittsburgh. You know, when's the last time? I mean, the Steelers won in Baltimore last year, but the Ravens were resting their starters. You know, I mean, I think the only time, and then Lamar Jackson, you know, was hurt the last couple of years. In 2020, yeah, they beat Lamar Jackson with Ben Roethlisberger, but that was when there was no fans. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, probably struggles against him in Pittsburgh. But, you know, we saw what he did against them in Baltimore, and he lit them up. The Steelers need a quarterback that can compete with those two guys. And who's that going to be? It's not going to be Russell Wilson. It's not going to be Justin Fields. So, but the problem is the Steelers are kind of in no man's land because they never have a season where they're picking in the top three to take a top quarterback. So that's why, you know, they're going out and, you know, in 2022, you sign Mitchell Trubisky, you draft Kenny Pickett, and you're hoping Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy. He obviously didn't turn out to be the guy. And then, you know, you run it back last year, Pickett gets hurt, Trubisky doesn't play well, and then you put in Mason Rudolph and you make the playoffs and you get eliminated by the Bills. And then you tried to change it up. You bring in Fields, you bring in Russ, and it looked like things were going to be a little bit different. You thought the Steelers were going to be hosting a playoff game, and that just didn't happen. Didn't happen. So, yeah, the Steelers are in a weird spot. I mean, I think some fans, I think, probably want them to just tank and just blow everything up, but they're not going to do that. So, I don't know. But, like I said, I think, for me, I would keep Fields, but I think the Steelers, they're ultimately going to keep Russ. That's my prediction. So, you know, as many of my other predictions have gone, maybe go with the opposite. Say, all right, well, they're definitely going to keep Fields now because you said that. Who knows? But yeah, it's going to be. I'm excited for this offseason. You know, I'm curious to see where some of these big names end up going. These receivers, like could we see DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill get traded? You know, what's going to happen with Sam Darnold and Fields and Russ? You know, we'll find out. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though. Who do you think the Steelers ultimately stick with? Is it Fields? Is it Russ? Let me know. All right, so with that is pretty much it for the show for today. I apologize if my voice sounds a little off today. I'm battling a little bit of a cold. You know, my throat's been kind of bothering me for the last week or so. It's gotten better, but, you know, I'm hoping I don't get sick like I did, you know, the beginning of football season, because that was rough. I don't even know what it was. You know, it wasn't, I mean, it was just some kind of respiratory infection. But, yeah, I hope I'm not, I mean, I feel better than I did then, but, you know, yeah, my throat's been bothering me, so that's why, you know, if I sound a little weird, that's the reason for it. So hopefully, you know, we get over it. But like I always say, only time will tell. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna